All right, you ready to start?
Now we're good. I don't know what we're talking about though.
Hello, welcome to Showboys. What's up? It's been a while, like 2.5 months. I feel like does that sound about right?
Yeah, we kicked everybody off, and Chad and I took over this summer for House of the Dragon. It was a
Yeah.
great series. Even though at the time of recording, it's halfway done, but it was awesome.
Has the first half been awesome?
Oh, it's been awesome. It's the best thing on TV, hands down.
Interesting. Yeah, we're back. I'm back, I should say. You've been here. Well, it's funny. I'm back in multiple ways. Back on the podcast, also back in Ohio, and also back in Nick's basement. Because look, that's Nick right over there. Yeah, so in town, been visiting for a couple weeks. Had to come over, hang out with Nick, and while hanging out with Nick, got to record a podcast episode. Yeah, we have a fun episode tonight. We're going to be talking about basically the only thing I've been watching all year. And yeah, before we do that, got to, of course, shout out top tier patrons Tim B, Yusuf H, and Joe C. Thank you guys for your support. Had to add dramatic pause there, but no, for real, we appreciate your support. It means the world to us. All of our other patrons, thank you so much for your support. If you're wondering what I'm talking about or how you could support us, you can head over to patreon.com/showboyspodcast. Check it out. Sign up today. There's even a tier for our new spinoff podcast, the Poke Boys podcast.
Oh yes.
You can sign up there. It has a $3 tier. But yeah, excited to be back. Excited to talk about my favorite thing to watch this year, and that is my ever expanding World War II cinematic universe.
That Mike didn't know existed.
Yeah, dude. Did you guys know that World War II happened in real life?
And they've made a few shows, series, movies about it, and Mike decided he was gonna just start at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
What's the beginning, Michael? What started all this for you?
Well, okay, if we're gonna get technical, I guess the beginning would have happened at the end of last year when I watched All Quiet on the Western Front, which was actually about World War One. But no, what kicked it off, of course, was Masters of the Air, which we did 2 episodes, I think, covering that series.
Yes, sir.
Fantastic show. Towards the end of that season, it might have been like the last episode or second to last episode. The crew provides air coverage over Normandy during D-Day, and during that episode, I was just like, man, at this time, Tom Hanks is, storming the beach in Saving Private Ryan. Now I want to watch Saving Private Ryan, so I did that. Wow, I feel like I'm at a campfire right now, like telling a scary story in the dark. Yeah, so that's kind of what kicked it off, and essentially all year I've been just watching World War II stuff, whether it's movies or shows. Yeah, so let's talk about that. I know you've watched a few things this year too, but where do you want to start?
Well, we did talk about Masters of the Air twice, which was excellent. I think definitely a big thing that has driven us to talk more about it was the Turning Point documentary on Netflix, plus
Yeah.
the World War II from the Front Lines, narrated by John Boyega, also on
Yes.
Netflix. That was also that one. I think is what really kind of kickstarted World War II esque Cold War era content, because I realized there's like new footage they're digging up out there of like World War II vets talking about it, or even World War II itself. Because I watched a ton of this stuff back in the 2000s on like Discovery and History Channel, and you think you'd seen it all, but they're like, boom, more.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The Turning Point series, actually, both of those on Netflix were really, really great. Excuse me. I of course watched From the Front Lines first before Turning Point. Um, but yeah, both of those amazing docu series on Netflix. I think From the Front Lines. You talked about that last year, right? In
Yes, I brought that up in
2023.
a what's watching at least. Yeah.
Yeah, that is just super fascinating docu series. I forget how many episodes it was total, but 100% of every episode is just footage from the war. And I have some questions about how they captured said footage in some things because it's like, how did you get a camera person there to catch this and like not get shot by the enemies because of, I don't know, it just seems very interesting. So basically, what I'm saying is World War II is fake, just like the moon landing. It's just never happened. World War II is fake. Um,
Yeah, it's weird because I think there was just I don't know if there was dudes with like cameras and they should have been shooting or like they just had like or that was like a job in the military was to be the cameraman.
yeah,
Um but I don't know. Some of that stuff still amazes me too. Is like why is there a cameraman like
yeah.
right
You're
there?
in the middle of like the most ridiculous firefight, and there's guys like, "All right, hold it right. This is a great shot. Okay, just don't move." Like here,
Don't get shot, person.
yeah. So were medics like
They had
off limits?
GoPros.
No, like was it like not kosher to shoot the enemy medic?
Yeah, so I guess one thing that's different from a lot of modern conflicts where like we don't actually go to like formal war with like any other nations. Like there was like a code of ethics like for I mean thousands of years. Like there's always been like a wartime code of ethics that opposing militaries would honor. So like even in World War One, during Christmas time there was a ceasefire and they like exchanged like singing. They would meet in the middle of no man's land and like be kosher. It's super weird because a lot of times, especially World War One, these people were like relatives that just happened to be fighting a war against each other. Um, so so back then, yeah, like medics, they they typically stood out whether through like an armband or like they were very clearly marked up with the cross. Like it just was kind of a given to not shoot at them when they were like trying to do their job is how I
Right.
understand it because that's just like a total dick move.
So I was going somewhere with this. Maybe the camera crew was the same. Like maybe before we got into the war, we shot
Yeah.
like Hitler an email and we're like, hey, we're gonna be sending some camera crews along with our troops, okay? Let's not shoot them. We're just gonna treat them like medics. Just pretend they're not there. Because otherwise, I don't know how we're getting these shots of these guys are not just getting slaughtered.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of this it was recently like on a short or whatever, and I forget who it was. Because but they're like, you know why the Nazis get the worst of it is because they filmed everything. If they wouldn't have filmed everything, it wouldn't have been so bad for them. Because like plenty of people have done plenty of horrible things throughout history, but they didn't like proudly film it.
Yeah, yeah. The other big takeaway. Okay, so first takeaway from the front lines. Wow, I said from too many times in a row. First takeaway from World War II from the front lines was how the heck are they capturing this footage? Second takeaway was um, all the depictions of Nazi Germany in like movies and TV shows, 100% accurate. With some of the shots from like the rallies and like the banners, the colors, like how decked out everything was. I totally thought that all of those things that you see in like the Wolfenstein games or like
Yeah,
any
yeah.
any show depicting, being in Germany during, Hitler's reign, totally thought it was dialed up to like 11 and over the top. Nope, it's just how it was.
For Nazis to become like exaggerated, you have to go science fiction and or like supernatural with them. Other than that, like yeah, it's all pretty on the nose accurate. You don't have to make stuff up for them. Um, which is really weird because we live in obviously a completely post World War II world where they became this foundation of evil for us. So like of course you're like, oh yeah, the bad guys, they can't be that bad. Or they can't be that excessive, that exaggerated caricatures of like evil. But it's like, yeah, it
No,
happened.
they just were.
They just were.
Crazy.
Yeah, especially when you look at like Nuremberg and like Berlin, like I don't know if you ever watched Man in the High Castle.
Mm-mm.
Um but like it was just a modest alternate history of like if the Nazis would have won, like it makes sense like how decked out everything in concrete and Nazi banners everything would be because they had a very good habit of doing that anyways. Even when you're in like small towns in occupied areas by the Nazis, there's just Nazi banners everywhere. They're like, "We're here."
Yeah. Yeah, that part was wild. Third takeaway, the absolute pile of rubble that Europe just was. like, like everything was destroyed.
Yeah, and they had to pay. Germany had to pay a lot of that for like 50 years. They actually had to pay reparations. they're they're like the one people that actually had to pay it because it was us saying it. You got paid all back and you got to rebuild it. But they got a good
Hey,
economy out of it
build
in the
back
long
better,
run.
baby.
Oh yeah, they built back pretty good. If you're on the western side of Europe, Eastern was a little slower going. So the Soviets were in charge of that operation. And
Yeah.
that's the other like big takeaway this time around for me is like they've really, I don't know if that's intentional or not, but they really drove home like the distinction in the past like 10 years of this content of like there is like the east and the west half of like Germany, and like Russians were just blazing in, just like laying waste to everything because they were rightfully pissed off because the Germans did the same thing to them.
Yeah.
But just how like two-sided it was because like we're rolling through from the west with like the British and the French, um, and the Soviets are coming the other way. And then when it actually came to like Berlin, we kind of like pumped the brakes and we kind of let them finish the job.
Yeah. You might want to watch out. It is 2024, and Putin is a bad guy. So I just want to just give you a warning before we get too far into it. In case you forgot, but Putin is the bad guy. So we got to watch what we say about Russia and Putin during this podcast, because we don't want to get canceled. But yes, yeah, the Soviet part of World War II is also just wild in and of itself. What they suffered, and then kind of like the incompetence, and then like the absolute brutality response. It's pretty wild. But yeah, from the front lines, really, really, really good docuseries. I also, there's a part in there. I forget exactly what episode it was, but essentially the Allies thought the Germans were hiding out in this like that historic chapel. You remember that?
Yeah, up on the hill.
Yeah, and the fact that, again, like you talked about, they were kind of like the code of conduct during wartime is like to not obliterate historical like
Or religious.
landmarks and like
Yeah.
things of historical cultural significance. And so the Allies thought that the Germans were hiding out there, and there's like, nah, screw it, and
Decisions were
then
made.
bombed it. And then it turns out the Nazis were not in there; it's a bunch of civilians. Whoopsie.
Decisions were made that day. Um, I guess that had to happen at some point. I guess can't
Yeah,
can't all be perfect.
yeah, and that's another great thing that we get from the front lines. Is obviously, we live in America, so we always get all of the great aspects of America's involvement in World War II. But like all sides in war, sometimes you have to do things maybe you're not proud of, or like you said, mistakes were made, and you get to hear a handful of those stories from the ally side. Just some of the absolutely relentless, like, napalm bombing of German cities that killed a bunch of civilians, or that church incident. But a lot of things these days, like, now are kind of starting to, I don't want to say like come out, but like people aren't as bashful to talk about some of the less favorable stories or things that happened during the war. I don't know if that makes sense. If you understand what I'm saying, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a combination of like, obviously, as a society, we're getting better about speaking our truths. So I think a lot of it is people are looking for like the fresh stories, the news stories, the stories that haven't been told. So obviously, a lot of those are probably maybe the less favorable ones that immediately post war, and then even during Cold War era, we weren't like jumping and screaming to say, "Oh yeah, we did these horrible things along the way."
Yeah,
So I think it's a part that, but then also part we're running out of footage. So eventually, we have to show and talk about this stuff that someone found. So someone's going through the archives and they're like, "Huh, this is new. Oh well, we need it. We need
yeah.
to make a new documentary to release."
Yeah. And I think at least half of the population of America hates America now. So I think it's probably like
Yeah,
the cool thing to do, to be like, look how
yeah,
bad we suck, guys.
yeah.
We suck so bad.
We did bad things at war.
Yeah, man, I can't believe we like helped free the world of maybe like the most evil person that ever lived. Can you believe these atrocities, bro? Um, yeah, so World War II from the front lines, recommended, very good. Uh Maybe I'll I'll steal this from you. Maybe not for everyone, but for the people that it's for, you'll really like it. You gotta like the docu series flow, the
Oh yeah,
documentary like flow. If
yeah,
you are into documentary stuff, you'll probably love From the Front Lines. Um, but if you're, I don't know, because it's not like your classic documentary format. There's no there. Well, I shouldn't say that. There are few interviews and very few cuts to the people being interviewed, but it's like 95% just
yeah,
footage from the war. Which also, if like seeing actual war footage is not your jam, probably could be a little triggering to some people, because they show like dead people and like
yeah,
people getting blown up and shot. So, um, I mean, it's not like super gory or graphic, but that stuff
yeah.
is there.
One thing I was kind of embarrassed about was when I watched From the Front Lines. They showed the bit about after France got liberated and they're shaving those French chicks' heads
Dude,
because
I
they
was just
slept
gonna
with
say that.
Nazis.
Yeah,
So I saw that and I was like, "Whoa, I never knew that," and I thought it was so cool. Then I watched Band of Brothers and it's in there,
dude,
and I'm like,
are you in
"No."
my head right now? Because I was
Yeah.
literally about to say that. I was like, yeah, I was gonna wait until I got to Band of Brothers, but yeah, they straight up like did that in Band of Brothers, and what they did in Band of Brothers was like 100% accurate.
Yep.
Because there's actual footage of that in From the Front Lines of what they did.
It
Which
looked identical too. They did a good
yeah,
job.
yeah, wild stuff. Talk about shaming,
Cures.
public shame. Holy crap! What happened in Game of Thrones? Nothing compared to what happened in France.
I mean, oh yeah, good.
um, yeah, great stuff. Recommend.
Isn't that bullying though?
I mean, yeah, yeah, no
Before
sugarcoat.
before before there was like internet bullying, there's public square bullying. Like you
Yeah,
got hauled
just.
out to the center of town and head shaved.
But you know what? I bet they never slept with another Nazi.
Uh, I mean,
Sometimes
that'd be
shame.
tricky. Yeah, that'd be tricky to sleep with Nazis after that.
Okay, I'm gonna say something maybe controversial. Sometimes shame is a great teacher,
Yes,
but
shame.
maybe like pinning down women in public square and forcefully shaving all their hair off is maybe a little too far when it comes to shame.
Yeah, but they weren't even like pinned down though. They really just like were putting like they were sat in chairs and just like they shaved their heads, and it's almost like they had this look on their face like they knew this was coming. Like they weren't surprised. They were like, "Damn it, you caught me." Um, let's just shave my head and get it over with.
Yeah, yeah. From the front lines, good. You should watch it. That was probably so my watch order was Masters of the Air, obviously great. Go listen to our other episodes. Saving Private Ryan, obviously amazing movie, still holds up just as great as it was when it came out. We don't really need to talk about that. Saving Private Ryan's classic. Do
What
we?
is
Do we
that?
have to talk about that? We don't need to talk about
No,
Saving Private Ryan.
no.
While I was watching Saving Private Ryan, I was reminded of From the Front Lines. So that was the next thing I
Mhm.
watched. After that, basically, if it's a World War II piece of like drama, Tom
Mhm.
Hanks either like EP'd, directed, wrote, or starred in it, or did all of those things. So I was like, okay, what else has Tom Hanks done?
That
Oh,
dude loves World War II.
yeah. Um, he did a movie called Greyhound. Do you remember that? Came out
Yes.
like 2 years ago, maybe. Within the last 2-3 years, maybe even last year. I don't recall exactly when it came out. It's relatively new. It's an Apple original, and it was on Apple TV. So naturally, threw that on. Completely like forgotten about aspect of World War II for me.
Mm.
Are you familiar with
Boats.
the movie? Did you watch it? Do you at least know what it's about?
I didn't watch it, but I read its description on Apple because I wanted to watch it.
Yeah. So, Greyhound follows a naval convoy, particularly Tom Hanks' ship. He's a captain of a battleship that's sole job is to hunt German submarines to protect the convoy that delivers supplies from America to Europe across the Atlantic. And apparently, the Germans just absolutely decimated every single convoy that we tried to send. I mean, obviously supplies got over there, but not without heavy casualties and losses because the German submarines just, I mean, it's a cheat code. You're hiding under the water. Come on,
Yep.
how do you do that? But Greyhound was a great movie, detailing one such journey and kind of showed how we defended against the German submarines. It was very intense, very crazy. Like, I guess I never questioned how we were able to like supply Europe and stuff. I don't know why I thought like they just strapped tanks to like huge cargo planes and
Right. Yeah. Lots of airplanes.
um but yeah, so I mean, it makes sense, and it was just a really cool aspect that I feel like never gets talked about, especially in pop culture. Um, to my knowledge, I could be wrong, probably am wrong, but this has to be one of the only, if not only, very few pieces of movie or show that covers this aspect, and it was a good watch. It's a good watch if you have
Yeah,
Apple TV.
yeah. I mean, U-boats are definitely a thing, and I guess I mean I played a lot of like Medal of Honor and like World War II games growing up, and there's always like U-boat missions where you have to go to the U-boat dockyards and like sabotage the U-boats so you can like help that war effort. And that was even Masters of the Air when they're trying to blow up the U-boat pen yards in that one city. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it was wild. I'm trying to think of because it has been a while. That was probably like I don't know February or March when I watched that movie. It's July now.
half a year ago.
Spoiler alert. Also, what a great time. I know Independence Day is not independence from Nazi Germany, but what a like it's 1 week actually literally from the 4th of July that we're recording this. What else could be, as patriotic of a topic to record about than World War II?
Saving the world from evil, nothing.
Exactly.
It was kind of like our
Oh my gosh, dude, I'm so mad at myself. I have dude, I wanted to wear my 4th of July shirt
oh,
over
that's
here.
right. That's what you were gonna do. You talked about
Oh
that
my
like the whole time.
gosh, dude, it is the coolest shirt ever, and
You're
I
too
can't even
busy wearing
explain it.
hoodies in
I know
summer of
because it's
Ohio.
freezing. I'm freezing
Oh my
cold.
god.
Anyways, trying to remember the particulars of how they defended against the U-boats, and I think essentially they just like uh use sonar to track the U-boats, but even when they tracked it and they could like triangulate like the route, they would try to intercept it. But once they got to where they thought the U-boat was, it's not like they can see anything. So they just like
Right.
start chucking barrels of explosives over the side of the boat and then just look for oil coming to the surface of the
Surface.
water. So they're like they would chuck a bunch of explosives in and then it would just be really intense, like everyone looking at the water, like are we going to see any oil or are we going to hear any of our ships in the convoy exploding behind us because we missed?
Oh my god.
It's a good movie. It's a good movie. For those of you who have Apple, uh, definitely worth a watch now that it is, of course, available for free. Um, but I would say of Tom Hanks' World War II projects, probably near the bottom. It was
Yeah.
still good, but like it's no Saving Private Ryan. It's
But
no
better than
Masters.
Battleship.
No, I don't even know what that is. So yes, I'm gonna say yes.
It was a Navy like 2012 Navy like hype advertisement movie that had like Rihanna in it and a bunch of random other like B tier actors at the time. And it's like aliens invade and they drop EMPs, so that disables all the modern warships. So they have to use old school battleships to defeat the aliens. It's quite rad from like a perspective of like effects and like it's like a Godzilla movie, but no Godzilla.
Interesting. Also, I just want to maybe we should have done this at the beginning. Apologize to you listeners out there if you hear echoes or I'm trying to mute my mic when I have to clear my throat, but I'm like 7 feet away from Nick, so you'll probably hear my voice through his thing or the fact that like Nick is like basically turned around looking at me on his couch. Sorry, we're recording in the same place. Deal with it.
Alexander Skarsgård, Brooklyn Decker, Liam Neeson.
Liam Neeson. Liam Neeson's. That's wild. Yeah,
Yeah, Rihanna.
it's okay. It's okay. I mean, if you don't have anything else to watch and you're in a deep World War II kick like I was, it's a good watch. Um, watch Greyhound. Then I don't know why I'm sitting here trying to rack my brain. I need to pull up my list of things I've watched this year. That would actually be um, more helpful. While I'm doing that, has there been anything that you've watched aside from Turning Point and Masters of the Air?
Oppenheimer. That was a good kind of like dramatized version of a lot of what the beginning of Turning Point covers.
Hmm. Yeah, let's not
So
go too far into detail on that. We'll cover that for sure when we get to Turning Point.
oh, okay. Other than that, yeah, Band of Brothers. Band of Brothers was the big one because I hadn't seen it and it was embarrassing. Um, it's interesting how like good that show is, but like the weird dated things that haven't aged well in it. Like
Like
Ross
all the
from
racism. No,
Friends.
I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah,
I'm just
Ross from
kidding. I don't think
Friends. Ross from Friends. Jimmy Fallon. Just those like weird cameos.
dude, I
Like
almost fell off the couch when I saw Jimmy Fallon pull up in a Jeep. I
pulls
was
up in
like,
the
I
Jeep.
literally can't take this. I mean, he says like two sentences.
It really pulls me out of it. Like when those two show up, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
no.
I'm just waiting for him to start laughing.
Oh god. At least it isn't Jimmy Kimmel. That's the better
Yeah,
thing.
that would be
Ugh.
literally the worst. Um, so yeah, so after Greyhound, um, came Turning Point, but I kind of want to save Turning Point for last because there's a lot going on there, and then it kind of bleeds into current day time. So, um, Band of Brothers is uh, the next thing I've started. I haven't finished it yet.
Mm,
I've maybe seen up to episode 8, maybe 7. I forget.
it's
Um,
basically over.
yeah, I'm really close to the end. Um, I can't remember if the episode Jimmy Fallon shows up in was the last episode I watched. That was
That
like
sounds like
episode
8 to
6.
me.
Yeah?
I feel like it is. It's pretty late in the game. It's like right after the snow episode or right
Yeah,
before.
it's at the very end of the snow episode.
Mhm.
But yeah, my thoughts on Band of Brothers. Okay. First off, Chad really hyped this show up a lot. Like a lot. So I went in with mega high expectations. Um and really it's up until episode 6, which is I don't know the title of the episode, but it's the snowy episode where they're like hunkered down in this forest in like brutal winter. They have like no supplies, like really like no winter clothing, and everyone's like freezing, and they're just basically like trenched in the woods and like across the small opening in the woods the Germans are kind of trenched in, and they're just kind of like chilling there, both freezing to death essentially.
People are going like to the bathroom and just stumbling upon each other. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
just now, I that my favorite part of that was like the like end credits because they always have like little blurbs about like
Mhm.
tying it back to like what actually happened, and it's like all those hard asses, like not a single one ever admitted to being like rescued or anything. They were just like, we didn't get rescued. Like we won that shit. Like we held it down. We saved y'all.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, that episode was actually really good and my favorite episode so far. I think like just the style, the way it flowed as an episode, I thought it did some cool like artsy things, but also um just kind of really displayed the suckiness of conditions that a lot of these people went through. Um
Then
and
I
up
know
and
which episode of The Sopranos would be your favorite. There's a
yeah,
snow episode in Sopranos that you would really
is
like.
it? They
Yeah,
just
it's
like
like one of the top ones.
oh, okay. I got good taste, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, up until that episode, I was kind of like feeling pretty like average. I was like, this okay, but it's I'm struggling to hold my attention. Um, some of the things, like you said, didn't age very well. A lot of like the special effects stuff was like pretty rough. But did you ever watch Walking Dead?
First 3 seasons.
Did you watch when a character named Abraham showed up? He was like kind of like a military dude, had a flat top ish.
Don't think
And
so.
he
If I did, I don't remember.
the guy who played him is in Band of Brothers, and he plays I think he's the dude who like
Oh,
always has a cigar.
the big blonde-haired dude?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first time he shows up, I was like, "Oh, that's Abraham from Walking Dead. That's awesome." He basically is the same character in that show, just with
Yeah.
zombies instead of Nazis.
Big stoic.
Yeah, yeah,
Nazi zombies?
yeah. But yeah, so I still have a few episodes to go. Obviously, I'm gonna finish it, but like it's taken me a while to get through this, just because like it hasn't
It's a
grabbed my
slow
attention.
burn.
Yeah, it hasn't grabbed my attention like Masters of the Air did, or either of these docu series.
Yes, because Butler isn't in it.
That's true. I did see his new movie recently, Bike Riders.
You're more of a Butler fan than I am then at this point.
It's pretty good. I think you'll like it.
I know I will.
It's, man, I kind of want to see it again. We definitely need to do an episode on it because it's good. Yeah. So Band of Brothers, you've seen the whole thing, or are you still working through it?
Whole thing.
Okay. And what are your thoughts?
It is a slow burn. I agree. The first like 5 episodes are like hit and miss. Like there's really good parts of those episodes, and then there's just like kind of just like the filler of everything that's going on. And obviously it's going a lot of detail to just, to show what a day in the life is, because there are sometimes where they're like just walking to like the next battle and like they're just like
It's the whole
hanging
episode.
out. Yeah, like they're just kind of, but it's cool because they really detailed, I think, you know, what the war was like. And it really gives perspective in terms of like, we didn't just land in Europe, D-Day, party on, and like save the world. Like there was months and months and months of just fighting through Europe that I think a lot of times get glazed over. There's like Battle of the Bulge and like all those random things, like
Yeah.
notable events, but like I think it's always lost how long all that took. Um,
Yeah.
but it definitely gets considerably better after that snow episode, and we kind of like build toward the end, which is really good. I like the end, and the end is naturally super touching, much like Masters of the Airs was, because you kind of
Yeah.
it's the culmination. It's definitely that one is a sum of the whole. Whereas like Masters of the Air for me, there's like standout episode that just rock out on their own. Episode
Yeah.
3, I'm looking at you. Um, but
Yeah.
Band of Brothers as a whole, you have to see the whole thing and then kind of think of it as like one
Mm.
big old piece of the pie, and then it's like really good.
I do like how uh at the starts of the episodes it starts with like interviews with the soldiers and stuff, actual soldiers from the war.
Mm-hmm.
Really like that. It's super cool. Because again, like we said in the Masters of the Air episode, like literally, those are the greatest, like greatest
The
people, like
goats,
greatest
the goats.
generation, like
What?
insane.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I was like, World War II is kind of like our so far like what our purpose was as like America. Like the reason we freed ourselves from the British was like to do that for the world, was to like save the world from evil Nazis.
Also,
Um,
if you think about it, like what what an even better way to assert our dominance over Britain. Like, not only did we did like 100 of us sail across the ocean and land in America, and then like a couple years later, like literally destroy you
That's
with
quite
like
the abridged version of
yeah.
the
Uh
founding of America.
yeah, not only did we like with 100 people like destroy you, uh you know, several years later, we had to come save you.
Well, yeah. I mean, let me think about this. From our Independence Day to the end of World War II, that was like season one and or the first like movie, and then Cold War is like the very bad sequel to and we're still in that sequel for some reason. Like it's the sequel that never ends.
Oh
Every,
no.
the '90s
It's
rolled around and we're like, oh, it ended,
yeah.
yes, and then 2001 happened, and it's like, oh no, man, like
Yeah, we're currently living Thor 2.
Natalie Portman's the star of a Thor movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um
But yeah, really good first part.
excuse me.
We're in like Act 3, and it's just a little bit of
Yeah.
a struggle.
Yeah, hopefully Act 3 is not like entering into post-apocalyptic genre.
Oh boy.
Yeah, let's not think about that. So, Band of Brothers, yeah, I'm gonna need to finish that. And of course, after Band of Brothers is over, I then it's only natural to go and watch The Pacific, which has our favorite Adderall ridden hacktivist Elliot
Oh, that's
from
right.
Mr. Robot. He's randomly in that show.
I should have went to the Pacific instead of Turning Point, but that's okay. I need a break from World War II direct.
Yeah.
So I need to start. Maybe I'll do that after House of the Dragon's over. I'll start watching the Pacific.
Yeah. So after before Band of Brothers, I watched Turning Point, The Bomb in the Cold War.
Hmm.
That's the last thing that I have that I've watched to completion. So again, I want to say that more towards the end, but maybe we can talk about a few things that I I have on my list of things to watch, and maybe if you have anything that you're looking forward to watching if you're going to continue down the World War II cinematic universe, or maybe there are things that I haven't mentioned that are like coming to your head right now, like, oh, Mike, you need to watch this. Have you seen this? So we can do that, and then we'll go into the turning point. Um, the next thing that I'm going to start, actually, before I get into the Pacific, is a very short series on Netflix. I think it's 4 episodes called The Liberators, which I had talked to you about this. I think it was you I talked to about this when we went to lunch the other day. But it has that very unique, it feels weird saying art style for a TV show, but it's that
Oh yeah.
weird thing where it's live action, but
Cell
then like
shaded.
yeah, but then like sketched over, and then it looks like Borderlands essentially. But it's a 4 episode little jog on World War II with a very unique presentation. I remember seeing it when it first came out, added it to my Netflix list, and then forgot it existed until like 3 weeks ago when I was going through my Netflix list. And I was like, oh, yeah, this exists. And it has to do with World War II. I must watch it. Um, do you know anything about it or?
Yeah, I watched like the first 20 minutes and was like, this is really cool. But it was one, not in like a theme of World War II stuff I was watching. I think I was more of in an anime time period. And I thought it was interesting because it looks animated or is to some degree.
Right. How do you
Um,
describe it? It's so weird.
yeah, I describe it as like it's a live action cell shade because like it's almost like a very intense Instagram filter,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
where it's just like yeah, like watercolor cell shade. But I watched 20 minutes of it and I was like, this is really cool, but I am not in like one, it's late and I'm not in headspace to like commit to this because I was like, it's World War II, it's gonna be dense. I'm
Yeah.
just not there for it. So that's I completely forgot about that. I should go back to that. That was a series, right? Or is it a movie?
It's a series. It's only 4
Yeah,
parts, so
yeah.
it should be a quick watch. That is on the list, and I'll probably knock that out before going to the Pacific, just because it's shorter. Um, a movie that I was reminded of yesterday, actually, thanks to a very interesting YouTube channel that my brother-in-law, shout out Joel, recommended to me. The
Joel.
Fat Electrician. It was like is a vet of some sort. I don't know what branch he served in, but all he does is tell super interesting, unique like war stories, essentially. And he had a video on the dude that the movie Fury is based on. I don't know if you remember that movie. Do you remember that movie?
I do. I was gonna recommend that one.
Yeah, Brad Pitt, Shia LaBeouf, um, Shane Bernthal. They are a an absolute wrecking ball of a tank crew. Um, Great movie. But the Fat Electrician video on that guy, uh, if you just YouTube Fat Electrician War Daddy, because that was his nickname,
Hmm.
man, great video. Like you were saying, because I, of course, shared one of the Fat Electrician videos with you. And then we were talking about how, like, how much of these old war stories are like true and how much are like embellished propaganda to feed the American patriotism machine and war machine.
Let's go.
Uh, but if the information that he found on this war daddy dude, this tank pilot, is true, even if half of it is true, it is the most insane thing ever. This dude was a monster. Like, holy cow.
I mean, that's like Rosie in Masters of the Air, right? Like, I think in all of the people that were involved in this, like, we're talking a huge portion of like the planet's population, like, was involved in this conflict. You
Yeah.
are bound to have like some just abnormal people, just where it just clicks.
Oh,
They're just
yeah,
gifted, and it just all clicked. Like, you're bound to have that, and I think that's how we arrive with these just like studs that just
yeah,
rocked, whether it's like running a tank, flying a plane, like how Rosie survived all that and did
yeah,
that in Masters of the Air. That's and then like it's like, you know what? I'm not done. I'm gonna go help try these fuckers on like in
yeah.
Nuremberg. Like, it's
Dude,
just insane. Like,
honestly, War Daddy is basically the Rosie of
yeah,
tanks.
right.
Did you watch the video that I sent on
No.
him?
Mm-mm.
Dude, okay, so not only is he just like an absolute animal in the tank, like responsible for just like absolutely made up numbers of like tank kills, like just insane wartime stories. He too gets basically like ordered to retire because of all the things he's done. Like, dude, you should go home. Like, you've definitely done enough. Like, you can
Yeah.
go home now. He refuses to until he essentially is wounded in battle and like has no choice, right, to go back. And after his recovery, I think like he tries to he like goes into teaching. He's like a shop teacher, etc. And eventually he ends up like getting involved with uh some tank training program and trains a tank division that ends up going into Operation Desert Storm, which was like the last war to use tanks. And so like maybe he wasn't trying, the Nazis, but he trained up a future generation of tank crews to go and fight and win in the last like true like
Yeah.
physical war. I don't know. It's crazy.
So no, yeah. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that because that was a popular thing on like History Channel back in the 2000s was like Desert Storm and like both of our incursions into the Middle East there.
Hmm.
We haven't formally really been, I mean, Vietnam and stuff, but by time the 90s and 2000s came around, we had Abrams tanks, and like we had never flexed the power of like the Abrams like in a true like battle scenario.
Yeah, they're just like
And
doing like 70 miles an hour through the desert.
it's insane because like there was a huge gap there, like, and even if we, what tanks we did use in Vietnam, like it was a completely different situation. So like all of a sudden we're like wide open desert, and we just have these things of just
Drag
massive just
racing tank.
like they're jumping dunes, and they totally went at Saddam like he had stuff. Obviously, the whole weapons of mass destruction that he never had. Like, but we totally approached that like they've got tanks, they've got military. Like, we got to go in there just like guns blazing because it might get hairy. No, we like wiped the floor in like
No.
within a day, just like we just took everything, just like blew over everything. It's like, yeah, no shit. We had like
Like Lamborghini tanks.
yeah, like these things were like Ferraris just like ripping. Like and like that was the thing, like because they have all the stats because they have computers in them, and they're like they were firing at like they were in the zone, like the way they were firing shots off in like record like return like fire,
Yeah, yeah.
fire, fire, like just and hitting every target, just like
Oh my
obviously
gosh.
we were idle for just a few 10 too many years, and we're just like
Yeah.
got a lot of practice. It's go time.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had a lot of time in the shop, so to speak.
Gotta open
just
that thing up.
just cooking up ideas. Yeah, so I want to rewatch Fury because that movie was awesome, and the cast is
I saw that in
absolutely
theaters.
ridiculous. Yeah, same. It was really good.
Yeah, it's a good time.
Um,
I used to have a shirt that said Fear because they were giving out swag for that movie for whatever
oh
reason.
really?
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
over at Tinseltown.
Shout out, dude. Since I've been back, I've gone twice.
Whew,
Tinseltown is like 1,000 times better than the theater by my house down in Florida.
that's crazy.
Regal and Cinemark don't even compare. Like Cinemark is like light years ahead. It is Cinemark is the Desert Storm tank to, to Regal's Middle East Army. Like I don't know. That's
Yeah.
just it's not even fair.
Have you sat in the haptic feedback seats yet?
No.
That would be good for a Fury. Rewatch Fury and those things.
Dude, okay, in the video,
Oh
that
yeah,
crew, the guy who would reload the shells was so fast at it during one of their missions. They were firing on uh, basically a tree line or ridge or something they couldn't see in, but they knew that there was they saw at least one tank. So this is shortly after a battle they had where there were a lot of tanks. So they're like, all right, we're just gonna go balls to the wall and get him like while they don't expect it. And so just his tank, allegedly, uh, is firing on this one tank that they suspect in this area. And they're firing so fast that the Germans think that it's multiple tanks shooting at them. But it's just because this dude is just like a machine reloading the cannon.
yeah.
And it turns out there's only 2 tanks. but but their fire rate was so fast that they like the I think they hit one tank and the other tank's just like peace. Like
Yeah.
there's way too many people over there. But yeah, man, it's crazy, dude. Like it's just
There's a lot of those stories, and like, that's even Band of Brothers a few times where it's, or yeah, the main dude, the main like Lieutenant in Band of Brothers when he
Winters?
just like, yeah, Winters when he gets G'd up over that ridge and just was
Oh,
like,
yeah. Pops up right in the middle of like 50 of them.
Nazis are just like napping in the grass, and he's just like, papa, papa. Just
Yeah,
like,
that was wild. That was a
I mean,
wild.
I think that's like, I mean, that's why we attribute them as being the greatest generation because like they were just some good old boys, like going off to save the world, and they had that mentality where it was like, there weren't safety regulations and like
Yeah,
procedures to make sure no one dies. It was more like we're here to win, whatever that means.
right.
So like you got LeBron's just and like Jordan's just like coming out dunking.
Yeah, it's like the the NBA Olympics. Team USA. Not
Not
fair.
Nazis are out here like blowing their 3-game lead or whatever
Yeah,
in the playoffs.
that is a hilarious analogy and could not be any more accurate.
Getting smoked.
Oh man. Yeah, it's crazy. Like I've now that I've been laughing so much talking about all these
Blog
stories.
blog article. The Warriors are the Nazis of the NBA.
Wow. That's Dad, you need to clip that. But you basically just echoed every Cleveland Cavaliers fan over the last like decade. But no, I now we've been talking about this for a while and I've been laughing a lot. I do kind of feel a little bad like laughing so much about this stuff because we're talking about war and
Eh.
lots of people dying, and I'm just like, God, can you believe that? It's so
Okay,
crazy.
so that's enough. I'm glad you mentioned that because you remember Tom Brokaw, right? Like
Yeah.
NBC, like everyone
Yeah,
knows
I'm
Tom
Tom
Brokaw.
Brokaw.
Yeah, anyone that's like a millennial and under knows who Tom Brokaw is. So this was like a great like in hindsight, not the most kind of. It's another insensitive like situation where we were so brazen at the time. Like there are clips of him when they were showing live footage of like us invading Iraq in 2002 and like we are just lighting up the sky, just like bombing the shit out of Baghdad. And he's like describing it as a thing of beauty and like awesomeness,
Oh, jeez.
like fireworks in like the night sky and stuff like that. And at the time, yeah. But I always say, I was like, it's always incredible how George Bush in that administration somehow convinced the entire country, large in part, that an entire region of people were bad. Like
Yeah.
they were all just like that was a commonplace.
Yeah.
It was not a good time for Middle Easterns in America at the time.
I'd go out on a limb and say probably still isn't a great time. I don't know if we've gotten over that time yet.
But I mean, maybe it's just where I grew up, but I don't know anyone that was like, yeah, but that's like really not nice. Like to be
Right.
that way. I knew no one.
Yeah. Hey, hot take. North Korea is not the only master of propaganda.
Nope.
Just saying. Stay woke.
They just have no freedom of information.
Yeah. Yeah. The only difference is we willingly buy into it.
Yeah, that makes it sound kind of bad though too.
Yeah. Man, this this has been a really fun conversation because yeah, while we're joking, it's all true.
Yeah, it's all true.
And we all know it and guess don't really care much.
Yeah, and I just don't know where where all the people crawling out of the woodwork from 2002, and then when they're like, no, that was all wrong. We were saying this the whole time. Like, no one was saying
Yeah.
it.
Can I just say,
We
okay,
were
so
all on board.
yeah, no kidding. Before I came over here, I was at my parents' house, visiting them one last time before we left, before we go home on Saturday. And I
You
was
will see
telling,
them again though, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. They're not dying. So they're actually coming down to visit at the end of August, which is literally the worst time to come to Florida. But hey, they used to live there. They know the deal. It's not gonna
Yeah,
be a
they're living on
surprise.
the edge.
Um, yeah, I was telling my dad and my mom and dad about the things that we're talking about, the things I'm watching. Um, the only difference is, I am I I am a Republican, but I'm probably more towards the center than I am uh,
You have Shane
very
Gillis
far right.
syndrome.
Yeah, dude, it's true. It's so true. That joke is 100% true. um, However, my parents, very big Dems. My
Staunch
in-laws,
Dems.
staunch Dems. My in-laws, super hard pubs. Like my parents, my in-laws, like opposite ends of the spectrum. I'm like more towards my in-laws point of view, but much closer to the center than they are. Like I'm aggressively center, except for where I lean right. If that makes sense. Anyway, so I'm telling them all this stuff, and my dad, who's like huge Democrat, hates Republicans. Like my parents don't talk to my in-laws because of politics. Like that's how
That's
they
awesome.
are. Yeah, it's great. It's so great having separate family functions for like birthday parties and stuff. It's so fun. Um, with that being said, the only two specific people that he named about having great war stories were uh, George Bush in Vietnam being shot down and like basically fending off like a ton of people by himself, and John McCain. Definitely
Wait,
not
your father, your father-in-law.
my dad.
Why would he have great war stories about Bush and McCain?
I don't know. He's telling these stories and I'm waiting for the turn, right? There's
Yeah.
no turn. He's just like, "Yeah, man, you need to look up the oldest Bush and look at his story about
Oh, H
how
Dub.
like you know, he like got shot down and then he like fended off this whole squadron like all by himself and it was ridiculous and crazy." And he's like, "And of course John McCain." And I'm like, "Who are you? Do you know who you're talking about?"
It's starting. It's
Yeah,
just
but
really
he's
late onset.
yeah, it's definitely not early onset. It's very delayed.
This is it. Like
Yeah,
he's liking war stories about old staunch Republicans.
right. Yeah, it was crazy.
And
But
before
then
you
he
know it,
made
he's like reading like H. Bush's like biography.
right. No, it quickly turned around though. He didn't make the direct reference, but I know where he was going. He was like, "Yeah, man, it's crazy how fast Hitler rose to power." I mean, he was like, he was in jail for his crazy rhetoric, came out, and then was uh Fuhrer or whatever, whatever his elected position was.
It
And
was like 8 years.
I'm like, okay, so where's the Trump thing? When's that gonna come out? I know that's what you're trying to say. He didn't say it, but I know what he was trying to say. So he made sure to quickly be like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I still hate Republicans, but those two they were all right. Anyways, that was quite the detour. Do you have anything just burning on your mind where you're like, you should add this to your list?
Um, if you like older stuff like Bridge Over the River Kwai, that's like that one's good. Um, literally about a bridge over the River Kwai.
Wow.
Yeah. Uh, that one's good. I mean, well, see, that's all Pacific stuff. I've watched a lot of Pacific stuff, is what it turns out, and then a lot of documentaries about Europe.
Yeah.
Um, nothing. I know I need to catch up on a ton of like World War II movies that have come in the past like 5 years, like Dunkirk.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I need to watch that. I'll add that to my list.
there's a. I just know there's a ton that I missed out on. I need to. I want to watch All Quiet on the Western Front before it leaves Netflix. You're muted.
Yeah, tried to be polite and mute my mic for. I wonder how long I've been muted. I wonder if I was
No,
muted.
it was just then.
Okay. Yeah, Dunkirk. I need to add to the list. But yeah, All Quiet on the Western Front, great movie. Obviously, not World War II, but World War One. Still, it's pretty awesome. Still involves the Germans, so what's the difference?
My
It's like
problem
the
is though
prequel.
they take up so much energy to watch because
Yeah.
you have to actively pause them
Mm,
and find a spot
yeah.
because you can't fall asleep because then you're like, where's the spot I fell asleep?
Yeah.
Because it's all the same tone. It's
Yeah.
not.
It's true.
It's like
That
which
was.
part of Dunkirk? Because I fell asleep during Dunkirk. I've tried to watch it, but
Mm,
like which scene of Tom Hardy flying a plane over the ocean did I fall asleep in?
yeah. There was one that came out recently that is a different tone. Uh, oh shoot, I'm gonna have to look it up. Um, but yeah, Dunkirk is one that I need to watch.
Godzilla.
2014. Is it still on Netflix? Because I know I saw it on there and it was saying like, you know, leaving soon, and I've wanted to. Uh,
-1. That's World War II one.
oh yes, Godzilla -1 technically counts. Um, no, All Quiet on the Western Front was really good. It's unique because it's told from the German side, and basically the book that it's based off of was like written by a German dude, and it ended up getting banned in Germany because it's like anti-German propaganda. All Quiet on the Western Front being like a, you know, basically the propaganda they were being told while they were getting their like teeth kicked in by I forget who their opponents were. France, I believe, right? Wasn't it? Um,
They're on the Western Front.
so that book was basically like, yeah, anti-German propaganda, and it's just interesting seeing it told from the German point of view. It's really good. It's very brutal. It's a very brutal movie. Remake was fantastic.
I think there's one with Jude Law called Stalingrad. He's like a sniper in Stalingrad during that when the Russians were or when the Germans were trying to sack that place. That one's
Hmm.
good.
The movie I was thinking of that
Your mic's different.
is it?
You sound way different.
Huh. Let me take a gander at the old settings.
Pause.
Oh yeah, it's switched to my webcam for some reason.
Hitting over there, just hitting hotkeys.
You know, it was
Oh, that's way better.
my cord came unplugged
Wow.
to my webcam.
I wonder
So
how long it's been like that. So I don't hear myself anymore.
oh no, I guess we'll find out. um, so the movie I was thinking of that is very different tonally that just came out a couple months ago. The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare.
Yes.
Really wanted to see that while I was in theaters. Missed out on it, but still want to watch it. Looks very entertaining. It's got all the huge roided out action stars of today: Henry Cavill, Alan Richardson, um, and basically everyone else that has gigantic muscles. Just rolling around killing Nazis with British accents.
That's what I mean. Inglorious Bastards, if you haven't seen that.
Oh yeah, that's classic. I mean, come on.
That's history.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember when like that came out, like I'll just call them At the time when that movie came out, like 15 years ago, right? At the
Oh,
time, these would have had to been the like pre alt right. Um, the people who got upset at that movie because they're like, it's not historically accurate. They just want to show Jews killing Nazis. It's like, first off, it's a Quentin Tarantino movie.
yeah.
Second off, I think we're allowed to have movies that tell fictional stories in a nonfiction setting. Like, calm down. No one thinks this movie's real.
Right. That came out in 2009.
15 years ago.
On the nose, man. Look at you.
Boom.
You're like a walking clock calendar.
I'm like socks. Beep boop, beep boop, beep boop, beep boop.
I
Have you
have no
seen
idea
Buzz
what that
Lightyear?
means.
You haven't seen Lightyear
Nope.
because you have all girls.
Yep. Um, sorry, I was thinking because we're talking about like fictional World War II movies, which
They're
reminded
all
me
real.
of a great one called Overlord. I don't know if you caught that from 2018. Probably could find that on
Heard
Netflix.
of it, not seen it.
It is a basically zombie horror movie during World War
Oh
II.
yeah,
Small group of American soldiers find horror behind enemy lines on the eve of D-Day. Not the greatest, but it has Wyatt Russell, who we've
ooh,
last talked about in Monarch: Legacy of
yeah.
Monsters.
Oh Wyatt.
Yep. It's it's a fun movie. It's fun. Had some fun watching it. Um, yeah. Why don't
I don't know.
you?
The zombies just don't interest me.
That's rude,
Yeah,
but I
I'm
get it.
I'm racist against zombies.
I get it. That was a phase for me.
Yeah, for some people it's like 13 seasons of The Walking Dead phase.
Yeah, no, I didn't make it that far. I
Just
did
let it
read like
go.
100 issues of the comics, though. Probably more. The comics were ridiculous.
I'm sure.
Um, yeah, that was like, everyone's like weird college phase. Mine was zombies.
That's a lot of. I mean, Call of Duty got people through a lot of Nazi zombies in college.
True. Yeah, so I think we're at the end. So now we have to talk about Oppenheimer and Turning Point.
Hmm.
So why don't you tell me about Oppenheimer,
Yes.
and then that leads into Turning Point.
Yeah. So Oppenheimer talks about Mr. Robert Oppenheimer, who
Robert Downing Oppenheimer.
Robert Downey Oppenheimer, who Robert Downey Jr. is in alongside Oppenheimer. I was like, he was in that, but not. He wasn't Iron Man though. He was someone else. Um,
He wasn't Iron Man. He's actually Howard Stark in the Oppenheimer movie.
Well, that's what gets confusing. So I was like, well, technically, Iron Man touches on World War II stuff because his dad. I was like, wait a second, was that actually Howard Stark?
Yeah.
But yeah, Oppenheimer didn't invent, the nuclear bomb, but he was in charge of the operation or Project Manhattan alongside Matt Damon to develop the bomb. Um,
Alongside Matt Damon.
and I don't. I was very confused because I remember a lot of people complaining about like some extended like sex scene.
Butthole scene.
I missed it. I don't know how I missed it. I was like, I don't know. I'm so desensitized or what?
Oh,
But
you do watch Game of Thrones. Okay.
yeah, I didn't catch this scene because someone told me it was like 10 minutes long. I'm like, there was no 10-minute long sex scene first off, and then there was nothing that was out of the norm. Hey, your cord got pulled out.
Really?
Yes.
What?
What are you doing over there?
I was just adding another show to my
Still.
list.
Sit still. You're fidgeting.
No,
Yeah,
my microphone didn't change.
okay. So Oppenheimer's a good movie though. It's long for sure, and they go into a lot of detail. Surprisingly, Turning Point covers a lot of the same detail, which I thought was interesting. I was like, oh, basically the same movie. Um,
Did
I don't
they
know who
get it
copied who.
like? Did they get it like accurate? Did Oppenheimer get it accurate?
Um, they obviously used some creative freedom, especially when it came around to like testing the bomb. There's like a moment in the movie where like what's that dude's name who plays Piggy Blinder guy? Can never think of his name.
Duh, what is his name?
It's super Irish. Um,
Oh, I literally have
Murray, Cillian Murphy.
Cillian. That's right.
Yeah. He like goes up to the bomb of the test site, like all the way up the like oil rig looking thing, and he just has a moment with it like early in the morning. Um, that didn't actually happen.
That actually was the sex scene.
Yeah. I thought it was. I was like, is this where this is going? No way. Yeah, so it details a lot. The first big chunk of it is like Matt Damon comes and recruits him to help do this thing for America. And there's a lot of drama that kind of got swept under the rug for the sake of building the bomb because Oppenheimer visited Germany pre-war to learn from physicists over there because Germans were smart folk. They invented a lot of cool things or made really big bad things that were already invented. They're really good at making things bigger and more destructive and scary.
Hmm.
Movies don't really embellish much. Like you ever see their rail gun? Like they made the biggest like artillery cannon that had to sit on like two locomotives
Oh, jeez.
on rail line, and they just like move this thing around. Just poof.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, they're crazy. But so there's a lot there that they touched on because they started calling the question post-war, like how did the Russians learn about and like come up with nukes so quickly after the Americans? So there's a lot of like,
Yeah.
you're a Russian spy. There was a Russian spy.
I
So the
wonder how
government kind of
many.
turned on him. So the like later third act of the movie is about how the U.S. government turned on him
Hmm.
and like tried to basically just bury him, even
Interesting.
though he was arguably the whole reason everything played out the way it did.
Hmm.
And they did the one thing that was identical was the way they portrayed Truman when they met in Turning Point, where like they came to Truman is like, you gotta be real responsible with this power. And Truman's like, forget you, let's go. We're dropping bombs. And I'm gonna feel really bad after we do it, but we're gonna do it.
Yeah. I mean, so the is Act 3 like historically accurate? Did the government really go after Oppenheimer?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I mean, most of it's pretty accurate, but there's a lot of
Just embellishments and stuff.
embellishments and like stuff about him and his family and his like relationships. For some reason, he had a wife, but he also had like a side wife and like someone he met in college that he never fell out of love with. And
Can I just ask? Okay, so Prude Mike is going to come out. Like, why is there even a sex scene in Oppenheimer? Like, what does that fundamentally add to the story that is trying to be told? How is it relevant at all?
I mean, somewhere somebody was like, "Cillian, bro, you gotta get naked, because more chicks will come and see this movie, or dudes, if you're naked for a majority of it."
Right, but that's what I'm saying. Like, what does it add to the actual movie, to the
Nothing.
actual story? Like,
Nothing.
what? Why? That's just uh, maybe, maybe like subconsciously. That's why I haven't been watching much stuff. Is because like,
Oh, here's Prude Mike.
yeah, like what's the point of showing all that stuff?
Hollywood.
But like, why?
Yeah, at this point, I really
Like
think
we're not 13-year-old boys anymore. Like, you know?
yeah, I think all that worked back in the day when, like, movies and, like, HBO late night was, like, the only way, and, like, magazines was the only way to, like, get that kind of material, and then it was like that's why it was so cool to be like, "Oh, yeah, let's put this sweet sex scene in this movie for no reason because, people wanna see it." At this day and age, like, 1, everyone's so desensitized to it. 2, you can get it anywhere, everywhere, all the time. So it's like, yeah, movies don't need the, obligatory rated R sex scene. Like, just say, like, 3 F words and you can be rated R if that's what your goal
Right.
is. Um,
And like I don't know, I guess like I'm just getting to the point where um I mean obviously like my lifestyle, right, and my views as a Christian play a big part in that. But even if you were to take that out, like even if we're taught, I mean, language isn't that bad, but like, why does something have to be rated R to be good or be like a good story? You know what
or
I mean?
attract an adult audience or something.
Yeah, like, can I mean, can you just tell a great story in a visually awesome way?
I think it's just how behind the times, like, how slow Hollywood is to adapt to, like, how society is basically. Because even if you think about critic reviews and audience reviews, no one's, like, sitting there being like, "Ah, the best sex scenes in all these rated R movies. The top 10," right? Or, like,
Yeah,
they watch Oppenheimer, they're like, "Wow, that right there, really breaking
yeah.
some new
You know,
ground."
I was gonna give this a 6, but that really brought it up to an 8.5.
And that's the irony of it is, like, if anything, more often than not, like, the obligatory, like, random sex scene hurts the review of the
Yeah,
movie because 'cause they're like, "It was pretty good, it was going pretty well, then that happened, and then it really kinda
yeah,
took me out of it." Um
yeah. Uh, Not to like rabbit trail too far off on this, but we were talking about this before we started recording. The movie that I went to see with my father-in-law and brother-in-law on Tuesday night was Horizon: An American Saga Chapter 1.
Mhm.
And it's just like your old school western, Kevin Costner, basically Yellowstone prequel. Um Fine, moving along, telling the story of, our western frontier pioneers, right, during the Civil War. It's going fine, and then randomly, they just have this really awkward, like, 3-minute scene of some chick, like, basically sponge bathing herself and, like, slowly getting naked and, like, bathing herself, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
literally random, out of nowhere, why? Serves no purpose, like, what is what is the point of this? And then not only that, there's another scene, uh, maybe like 30 minutes later, Kevin Costner's like goes into this town. There's like a floozy lady trying to hook up with him to like prostitute trying to make money, right? Long story short,
Wow, floozy lady, that is very insensitive of you,
right?
Mike.
Yeah,
She's
jeez.
trying to make a living.
She was trying, and then Kevin Costner ends up saving her, and, like, he has to take her on the run from this group of bandits, right?
Oh, dear.
She's basically harboring a child that these
This
bandits
is Red
want.
Dead Redemption.
Yeah, basically. That the whole time, like, I just want to
That
go home and
exact
play Red Dead
storyline is in
Redemption
Red
2.
Dead.
Maybe that's why the whole time I was just like, I need to go play Red Dead 2 right now.
Yeah, it's done better though.
Yeah, probably is. I mean, it wouldn't be hard to do better. Uh, there's a random scene like later in their story, like he's literally just sleeping in the tent. She comes in like unprovoked out of nowhere and basically like rapes him while he's falling asleep and then
Did he fall
leaves.
asleep by the end?
Yeah. And I'm just like, I mean, I know there's always been this like weird like sexual tension between these two, but like again, just a scene that was so random and completely unnecessary. And it's just like also just super awkward because he's like literally falling asleep and she just like gets on top of him. She doesn't even like get naked or anything. It's just like watching her
It's
have
just watch suggested penetration with clothes on.
yeah, and he's just like literally falling asleep and she's like, "It's okay. You don't have to do anything." And I'm just like, "What? Why is this even here? This is so dumb." Oh my gosh. Anyways, um that was a tangent. Have fun with that one, Dad. I feel like the patrons are gonna get a real good amount of content that didn't come out in our actual episode. So, um, with that being said, uh, Oppenheimer sounds like it leads perfectly into Turning Point, which Turning Point, another docu series on Netflix that covers the tail end of World War II, the development, use, regret, and consequences of the atomic bomb and our decimation of Japan. Again, why am I laughing at that? That was literally one of the most tragic events in human history. But also spawned maybe one of my low-key favorite franchises in Godzilla. So I don't know.
Pros, cons.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, with the bad, maybe comes some good silver linings. Um, but yeah, super fascinating. It also does a fantastic job of explaining how the end of World War II led into the Cold War, the second half of the title of the docuseries, and then how the Cold War has culminated into the now hot war between Russia and Ukraine and what really is Russia and the United States by proxy through the Ukrainians. Um, super interesting series, like very fascinating because they do an incredible job of explaining at detail and at length the atomic bomb and its development and everything that went through uh like our heads leading up to dropping them and the fallout from that, no pun intended. How far have you gotten into it? Because I know you said you haven't finished it yet.
No, I'm like it's like episode 7. I'm pretty far along into it. I mean, one of my favorite parts about that was that they talked about something I never knew about, and it's like that poor like Girl Scout camp or something that like in New Mexico, like just
It's
hit there.
snowing.
Like, dude, like what the hell?
Yeah,
I've always wondered about that too, because I was like, we tested that
in America.
in America, and the science there was like, the wind this day. It's like the weatherman, like the wind's supposed to be going this way today. It'd be all right.
Yeah. I
But
think
it's
that was
literally been raining and storming the whole time before they did it. And then like the first sign of like not rain, they're like, let's drop it.
yeah. Yeah, it didn't end well for the Girl Scout camp. Absolutely brutal. But again, it that kind of goes to our earlier point of like now we're starting to tell the
Yeah.
unfavorable side of um, our wartime history, right? Because we're not perfect. We make a little boo boos here and there. But also, I think that that series, um, while being, of course, very anti-Russian, which is, of course, how we should be according to the media. Russia is the new Middle East, which was the old Middle East. If you get my analogy there, we of course hated the Russians uh, all the way up until the early '90s, and then we're like, oh wait, now we got to hate the Middle Easterns, and then we kind of desert stormed them. So we're like, back to the Russians, and Putin is the new Hitler, and of course all that stuff. This series is very leaning that way and very anti, of course, Trump. You get that in later episodes. I don't know if you've gotten that far yet.
The only thing that was just blatantly anti-Trump was the fact that they spent a lot of time talking about his lawyer who defended him in the 90s was also the dude that helped that crazy politician that they ultimately stopped. He was the one that was completely almost like anti-Semitic because they talked about that one
Oh yeah,
episode where like there was like I asked my grandma about this. That wasn't everywhere, but like in big cities like New York, they had those signs where it's like, you know,
no Jews
no
allowed.
Gentile, no Gentiles. They use like Gentiles, which means everyone but Jews or something like that.
Right.
So when I asked her about that, I was like, "Was that a thing?" She was like, "Not really, like here in Ohio, but like your big urban, go figure cities have like issues with these things continuously."
I thought only the Republicans were racist, dude. Come on, you're breaking the narrative, bro.
Hey man, first-hand account. Called up the grandma. Was like, "Hey, what's the deal here?"
Yeah, that's
So I thought that
crazy.
was wild, like because
Yeah.
they had the whole episode where it's like a little resurgence of anti-Semitism in like the U.S. And
Hmm.
that I forget what that dude's stance was that was so like problematic. He was just like completely anti-Russian on everything or something. I forget what that dude's deal was. Oh, his big thing was okay, he was trying to out like how the Russians got nuclear technology. So he was investigating everyone to the point where he was trying to make claims that the army like was actively infested with spies or something in like Russian plants. And like they were just like, all right, bro, I highly doubt the US military in World War II was like undermining everything.
Yeah.
He was just like trying to seek out these weird, he was trying to follow these weird leads into all the corners of the government and military. And people were just like, bro, pump the brakes. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I mean, everyone, well, maybe not everyone, but Operation Paperclip is a thing a lot of people know about, where the United States adopted a lot of German scientists after the war. Uh, who's to say there was not a you know Russian version of Operation Paperclip where they also adopted some German scientists?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's a really great series, and it's wild that the Cold War is just an extension of World War II. Uh, everyone clearly saw the devastation of the use of atomic weapons. Russia, then the Soviet Union, not just Russia. So big communist conglomerate of countries.
Wait, communism's bad, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Um,
Got fact check that.
Yeah, so, the Soviets start accumulating a massive amount of nuclear weapons. The United States, of course, is developing their massive amount of nuclear weapons, and the 2 main powers left after Germany is defeated, the United States and Russia, are just essentially having, like, an old old school Western stare down, like, in the middle of town, just, like,
I
waiting
just
for the other one to make a move.
I just find it hard to grasp that, like, I don't know, it wasn't just like a couple thousand or even a couple hundred like nukes on each side. Like we're talking like 40, 50, 60,000 nuclear warheads on each side. Like what?
Yeah.
Like where are all those for one? Two, like
Hopefully somewhere safe.
two, when it's like, oh, I think we peaked at like 20 something thousand. Maybe that was like global total between the two. But it's like,
Yeah.
one, where are they? Two, why do we need that many?
They're just flexing, bro. Stocking them up for a rainy day, dude.
Dude.
Um, yeah, it's literally insane. So, of course, you have the 2 vastly different political views, communism versus capitalism. So,
Democracy.
well, yeah, democracy, my bad. I get the C's, the warring C's, confused sometimes. Democracy, capitalism, um, and of course, both armed to the teeth with nuclear weapons, and far enough away from each other that if one of us launched one, we would detect it and know that our doom is coming, but have enough time to launch all of ours. So essentially destroying like half the world if somebody launched one nuclear weapon, all of them would get launched, and yeah, probably bring about like the actual apocalypse.
I like how there was just the one dude was hired by the government to like just do some math
Oh, that
and like the
report is
study,
crazy.
and he was just like, so like what's the, you know, given the whole worst case scenario, what's the damage, um
Yeah.
military with 20,000 like nuclear warheads? Like what's the damage look like from other, give us a few weeks. Let's get back to you. And like he keeps going back and forth with them, and the number keeps like, well, technically it'd be a little more
Yeah.
than that. And they're like, about a third of the world. Yeah, about a third.
Yeah,
Easily.
it's I don't know if it was that high, but, I think it was
20%. It was
a
fifth.
fifth,
Yeah.
but that's a freaking lot. If you get if you're talking about fractions in the single digits when it comes to the world population,
Yeah.
that is way too many people. Um, but yeah, that report is fascinating because he's like, well, initial casualties, like bombs dropping, like you're looking at this many, several thousand, 100,000 or whatever.
Yeah. 2 million.
But then,
Depending which way
in
the wind blows.
after some time passes and the wind currents take the fallout and radiation this way, this many more 100,000 people are gonna die.
Yeah.
And then after this long, because of the environment, like, deteriorating and not being able to produce, like, crops and stuff, like, this several 100,000 people are gonna die, and it, like, ended up just being this absolutely absurdly frightening number. Um, and yeah, so the Cold War, for those of you youngins like me who were born, at the tail end of the Cold War, um, it's basically just America and Russia just staring at each other, being like with their finger like 3 inches away from the launch button, uh, being like, "You better not push that button. If you push that button, I'm gonna push the button."
But that's also my other favorite thing from that series is that there's like several accounts of like just a single person being just like a good
Saving
person
the world.
and being like, you know what? Our early warning system might be wrong because it just doesn't seem right. Let
Yeah,
me double check this real quick. Oh,
yeah,
okay. Our bad. Like, talk about like checks and balances, there were none.
Yeah.
There was like one guy everywhere that was in charge of like
Yeah.
the check and the balance. But like having a bad day, he'd be like, "Oh fuck it!" Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, crazy stuff.
what was it?
Um,
Birds? What was the one like in the Arctic or whatever?
oh yeah, something way super trivial.
Yeah, there was like at least hundreds. Like they detected
Yeah.
tons of warheads,
There's
but
like,
it's like,
it was actually just a glitch.
yeah,
Whoops.
malfunction.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And it does a decent job of explaining what led Putin and Russia into invading Ukraine. Um, but I think it only explained a part, and it was the bad part, right? The part that makes Putin look like. Now, I'm no Putin apologist. I don't think he's a great guy, but I don't think he's the second coming of Adolf either. Um, so it explained Russia's invasion to an extent with a slant on it, right? And to further confirm the Shane Gillis early onset Republican, I have also, man, this episode might catch us a lot of heat if someone's still listening this late in the episode. But I've started listening to Tucker Carlson's podcast. Oh, not even joking. But dude, it's a great podcast, actually. It's really good. And he's a lot less hardcore far right than people think. Like he's actually a libertarian. Um,
Which
Go
I think
figure.
to most people on the left is still
Is alt right.
yeah.
But yeah, uh, shocker. He actually interviews Putin. You'd probably have to be sleeping under a rock if you hadn't heard about that. Listen to that interview, and it was really good. And he also has several episodes with people that talk about Putin and like the Cold War and stuff that are obviously more involved than Nick and I sitting in Nick's basement talking about a documentary we watched, but people actually worked in the government and were like emissaries and stuff like that. But to see the turning point side and then hear Putin's side and some of the other people who were involved in the government or whatever that Tucker's interviewed explain Putin's side. Again, they're not necessarily Putin apologists and supporting the invasion of Ukraine, but they paint a better picture of understanding Putin's thought process and what actually was the cause. And to sum it up, so NATO was formed, right, to
Well, according to Putin, it goes back way further than that. It goes back to like
a
1000 AD.
Poland and like yeah, no, dude, yeah, that's true. But the TLDR, NATO was formed right during World War II to basically form an alliance against Germany and the Soviet Union. Or was it at the end of World War II as an alliance against the Soviet Union?
Correct, yes.
Um, so when the Soviet Union broke up, Russia just wanted to be like normal. They even tried to not be communists and like wanted help being normal. And the super TLDR is like Russia would ask America for help being normal. America's like, sure. And then they were actually like, psych, no, we're not going to help you. So that already, created some tension. But even after the Soviet Union dissolved, NATO still existed, which it has no purpose because the whole point was to form an alliance against the Soviets. Well, the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore, so there's nothing to ally against. And Russia wanted to join NATO, and we're just like, no.
I mean, it's the same thing that happened over the nuke situation. Is like we developed the nuke, and we're like, we have this cool new toy, and like literally, like Truman or whatever, even just passively said it to Putin or not Putin, uh,
Stalin.
Stalin at the time, like, yeah, we have a new thing that's definitely gonna help us, change, end the war,
Yeah,
yada
we're the only
yada.
one allowed to have it though.
But yeah, don't you pay no mind to whatever that thing
Yeah,
is.
just
No
don't worry
big
about it.
deal. No big deal.
Yeah,
So obviously, naturally inquire, be like, oh, what is this thing? Oh, it's a nuke. What's it do? It blows things up. No one else is allowed to have them though, because that would be bad for
yeah,
anyone else to have them but us.
right.
I mean, and really, Russia has a complex about them. Everyone has a complex about them. Otherwise,
Yeah.
nothing would be interesting. And this goes back like thousands of years, like to those people in general. They,
Those people. No, I'm just
yeah,
kidding.
greater eastern part of Europe that borders into Asia, they've always wanted to be recognized by the West.
Hmm.
But for whatever reason, the West just doesn't care.
We're good.
Germany, Hitler literally thought of them as lesser beings, like on the plane of existence. So there
Yeah,
is a complex there where they just want to be recognized as like on the same tier
yeah,
as everyone else, and they never get it.
yeah, yeah. So the United States, like, yeah, we're actually not going to help you, like, not be communist, but communism's bad. But we're not going to help you not be communist.
But we don't tell them
Also,
that directly. We just kind of
no,
ignore them until they
yeah,
ask again, and we're like, "Oh,
yeah,
you didn't get the memo?
yeah, no.
Never mind."
Yeah, and then they're like, "Okay, but can we join your, like, cool club, NATO?" And also like,
No,
"No." And then they're like, "Okay,
you
well
scare us.
okay, well, whatever you do, can you please not let, these Baltic states join? Because 'Cause they're, like, right on our border. Can you at least, like, do us a solid?" And we're like, no, we're actually gonna let most of them in NATO." And they're like, "Okay, well, can you at least not let Ukraine join NATO?" Because, like, that little section of land is actually, like, culturally significant to us and, like, whatever rightfully ours according to Putin and, like, history, like, dating back hundreds and hundreds, hundreds of years, because of, like, Poland and something that happened. Go listen to the interview. He goes on, he talks about it for, like, 45 minutes. And we're like, "Okay, we won't let Ukraine join." And they're like, "Okay, cool." And then we're like, "Hey, Ukraine, you wanna join NATO?" And Russia's like, "Dude, you said you wouldn't let Ukraine join NATO." You're like, United States, we're like, "Oh, yeah, okay, we won't." And then we're like, "Ukraine, you wanna join NATO?" And then Russia's like, "What the heck, dude? You keep telling us you're not gonna have them join NATO." And they're like, "Oh, yeah, that's right. So Ukraine, you wanna join NATO?" And, eventually Ukraine joins NATO, and Russia's like, "Bro, we've been telling you since, like, the 1990s, like, don't recruit Ukraine into NATO, and you did it. So we're gonna go take Ukraine back." And here we are today. So while now this is just turning into a political episode now. While obviously I don't uh, you know want war, right? War is bad because
War is
people
bad.
die. That's not good. And obviously, communism also not great. Generally bad for societies that try to operate by communism. Um, you can just like look at historical data to know that generally those societies do not tend to fare well. Um, so those two things not great, not good look on Putin. But I can also understand why he did what he did. I'm
It,
not like
it's also bizarre how much international relations boils down to like schoolyards, lunchroom style like politics, where it's like, "Hey, can I sit at your table? Yeah, tomorrow." You come to sit at the cool kid table,
yeah,
and they're like, no, not today.
Yeah.
So, another time.
Yeah.
And like in some sense, like Russia just wants to, like you said, be normal, be part of the
Yeah.
cool kids, and be like recognized. But everything that just passively doesn't happen just seems like the whole missile defense thing, because like America was developing the missile defense system in Europe to
Yeah.
defend against missiles and nukes from who? Anyone that wants to shoot them. Russia's like, can we get in on that? That seems like a
No.
smart idea. No, not you.
Yeah. We're also
But
going to put these literally right next to your border. That's like seriously the biggest takeaway from Showboys Politics episode number 1 is before you jump to conclusions, like actually listen to all available sides of the story because
well,
uh,
no. The newsreel when Ukraine started it was unprovoked.
yeah, it was it was 100% provoked by the United States, by the way. uh, so
No, it was unprovoked.
yeah, so now we have this like small, poor, like both like financially and like figuratively poor country, Ukraine, going to war against a massive like population uh war machine
But for some reason, not very
Russia.
effective. Like, why haven't they taken all of Ukraine yet? That's what I don't get. Like, what are they doing?
Because I don't because they're not
They suck
fighting.
that bad?
They're not fighting Ukraine. They're fighting America through Ukraine. We're we're funding, like giving them
Yeah.
money and literal war supplies that
They just
Ukraine
don't.
is using to fight Russia. So
Yeah,
we're
okay.
we're literally like the closest to being at war with Russia without technically being at war with Russia.
I'm just really annoyed that when you say "we," like, literally, it's like our tax dollars.
Yeah. Yeah, literally mean you are funding a proxy war of the
It's
United
very,
States
very
against Russia.
upsetting.
Yeah. Um so maybe Russia is not like dropping the iron fist because maybe if they do, they're kind of a little worried of the consequences of that, but also like this is just bad. This is all around bad news. Because while this is going on, you know who is inviting Russia to the cool kids table, and that is China, which is I mean, I would not like a Russia China alliance against the United States. It sounds terrible. That's only like half the world's population in those two countries.
Russia, they don't have a bigger population than us, though. They're big
But
in landmass. They're not big in population necessarily.
and massive in natural resources, and China's
That are hard
massive.
to get to.
But regardless, to give an analogy of to maybe better
Is it an
explain.
NBA analogy?
No,
Oh
um,
man.
it's a geographical analogy. So, like,
Oh, okay.
okay,
Hit me with
so
it.
to understand Putin's frustration, right, and provocation that was unprovoked, imagine if Russia and China had an alliance. And okay, imagine Russia and China had an alliance, and they're like, "Hey, Mexico, would you like to be part of our cool alliance that's only exists to defend the world against America?" And Mexico's like, "Yeah," and we're like, "Guys, don't you better not invite Mexico to your cool
Not cool,
anti-American
bro.
alliance." And Russia's like, "Okay," and then they end up accepting Mexico into this anti-American alliance, and then station troops and build bases in Mexico right next to our border.
So you're
Um,
saying you're saying we could build a wall then?
here's another great analogy. Remember that one time during the Cold War that Russia, moved a whole bunch of missiles to Cuba? That's essentially what we're doing right now with Ukraine. And then being like, Russia, what are you doing? This is unprovoked. Why are you doing this? The horror. How could you?
Good thing Canada's on our side.
Oh, yeah. Good thing. I don't even know how their society is even functioning post-COVID.
No, it sounds so brutal.
Yeah.
Do they ever get out of lockdown?
I don't think so, which is weird because aren't they like the most polite people? It's like, sorry, but you guys can't come out of your house.
Can we come out now? No.
No. Sorry, but no. And they're like, okay, sorry, we asked. Oh, geez. All right. Well, anyways. Wow, this has been 2 hours. This is a great conversation. Do you have anything you would like to add before we end?
No, I think you covered it all pretty well. I'm just enjoying your onset republicanism.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm enjoying it. I kind of miss being ignorant and under the rock, like ostrich head in the sand. But hey, as long as I don't turn into Jordan, like
Where you just aggressively dislike everything all the time.
yeah, he's the early onset Republican fully developed. Like I'm still in like the symptom stage. Like it hasn't fully like latched on. There
He's
may still be a chance.
he's like
Stage
he's
4.
he's like one he's like needing a new roof away from like final stage, because like the cost of getting a new roof would just send him over. He'd be like, I got
What do you mean I get tax credits for solar panels?
he's just like one like house like expense away from fully evolving. That's all it takes.
Dude, I was scrolling through Twitter and saw him. Did you see that?
Mm-mm.
He was on this podcast. And it makes sense why he hasn't been back with us in a long time. Cuz they like had a set. He's like sitting in a comfy
Yeah,
looking
he sent
chair.
me pictures.
Oh, come on. I mean, what are we doing?
Yeah,
Come on, we got to step up our game. No wonder he doesn't want to come on.
we need a studio.
Yeah. You
Gotta
guys
go
just need to
find
move
an
to
old
Florida.
family video.
Yeah, dude.
No, I
I'm
would.
convinced nothing is going to go in that building ever.
No, we can't. We can't have property in Florida. It would just get blown down.
Yeah.
We basically would have to pre-record content to release during hurricane season, and after while we rebuild.
Hey, I know Ian just happened, like 2 years ago.
Burrow.
No, Beryl happened like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
But that didn't hit Florida. And the entire time I lived in Florida the first time, which was like a decade, not a single hurricane. The odds of a hurricane blowing in to the Gulf and not dissipating into a tropical storm are already not very high. But then for it to come into the Gulf like this, and then where I live in Southwest Florida, to immediately do like a 90-degree turn and smack Fort Myers and Naples, it's not likely. Though Ian did just do that like 2 years ago and like decimated Fort Myers Beach.
It doesn't happen often.
It doesn't happen that often, but that was like the strongest hurricane that came through that area in a long time, like 100 years. But yeah, I mean, you make a good point. But we could power the studio on solar panels.
The sunny state of Florida.
Yeah, solar panels everywhere. We could probably end the episode, but Naples Zoo has probably the not like it's not some outlandish feat of technology and ingenuity, but like I think it's so brilliant. I don't understand why more places don't do this. Their whole parking lot, well, maybe not whole parking lot, but like half their parking lot has like an awning over the parking lot, but the awning are just solar panels. So like they're stacking energy production and not taking up any space on their property while also providing their customers shaded parking.
That's right.
Why are places not doing that?
I mean,
That's
it's expensive.
genius. Who cares? It'll pay itself off in like 10 years.
Well,
Yeah, dude.
people aren't that long-sighted.
That's what's wrong with this country.
Yep.
Why is Shane Gillis so right?
Yep.
All
Full
right. Well,
circle.
I think that's good place to end this. I'm sure Dad's gonna have fun editing this 2 hours of content.
I don't know where he's gonna start. He should start at the end and work backwards.
Yeah. Well, it's been fun. Thanks for tuning in. If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe. We should probably do the subscribe thing like 7 to 10 minutes into the video
Yeah.
instead of waiting till the absolute very end. But yeah, subscribe. Go check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/showboyspodcast. Hope you enjoyed the House of Dragon season. If you liked it, let us know, because the thought of doing semi-seasonal content is right at the front of our brains. So it might be something that we continue to do, maybe more frequently. But yeah, Chad Nick did a great job for the last 2.5 months. And yeah, we're looking forward to it. Go subscribe to all the Pokeboy stuff. Go follow Nick's Lego Instagram account. But yeah, we'll see you guys around. Have a good one.
Hi, Dad.
I'm sitting almost inside the Lego zone. I got to see the server tower for Pal World in Valheim, and
And then shrouded, but no one plays.
the box is almost as tall as me.
Yeah, it's
Like
huge.
if I curled up in a ball, I could probably fit inside the tower.